Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 620, The Great Messaging App Debate. January 18th, 2021. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob North. Thanks for joining us. Facebook-owned WhatsApp managed to completely disrupt their own market this week over a revision to their privacy agreement. The action has led to widespread concern about the future of the platform. But should advertisers be worried? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, growing bad behavior over iOS 14 privacy notifications, whether CAN is coming back too soon, why insurance loves quarterbacks, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the founder of C-Spot Run and host of The Wendy Cooper Show. Ms. Wendy Cooper is back. Hi, Wendy.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me back.
Always my pleasure. Now, next, she's the founder of the Antipodean creative technology strategist, Ms. Michelle Excel. Michelle, hi, how are you?
Happy New Year, Bob. Very well. Joining you from very warm Oakland.
I hear you got some warm weather. It's not nearly so warm in Michigan, but we'll get to that later. And finally, we have the managing partner, have a managing partner and market practice lead for CI Squared, as well as host of the Across the Pond Marketing Transformed podcast, Mr. Samuel Mani. Sam, what's going on?
Hey, Bob. Happy to be here. Happy New Year to you and all the wonderful listeners. I will proclaim to be very meek and mild on today's show.
I don't know what that means, but okay. I don't want you to be meek and mild. I want you to be a tiger. I want you to go after people. Well, let's jive right into the topics. First up, the past week has been pretty tumultuous for Facebook-owned messaging app WhatsApp. Changes to the privacy terms regarding B2C communications were read as meaning all communications would be used for ad targeting and other types of nefarious, non-private type usage that Facebook is known for using their data for. Promoting a massive adoption of competing apps. India's, which is WhatsApp's largest install base, was particularly riled up, leading Facebook to take out a full-page ad explaining the change. You would think they would get this in the email that went out initially about this or some other notification, but they had to take out a full-page ad. So, Michelle, is the damage done or is there legitimate need for continuing user concern here? I mean, this is global. WhatsApp's entire user base is just rocked, and a whole bunch of apps like Telegraph and Signal have suddenly got a lot of attention that they didn't have prior to this. What do you think? What's going on here?
They have had attention prior, but not on a scale like this. I think this has affected a lot of, air quotes, normal people, and finally made some people question whether they should be moving away from WhatsApp or not. I got 2 requests this week. One from a couple of people saying, hey, we're moving to Telegram. And I got a couple from other people saying, hey, we're moving to Signal. And that just made my head spin because all of a sudden I started thinking, oh crap, am I going to have to move to multiple new messaging apps away from this? I think, and
that's always the problem. That's always the problem. You got to go to one app that everybody's using, or else you're totally effed in the end. It's just like I understand that pain.
Or categorized at least. The people that I do work with more on a daily basis are on this app, whereas friends and family are more on this app, or my gaming friends are on this app. That's manageable. But when it's across the board, across all of the apps, that's when it gets really, really difficult. So the updates, the new privacy policy, terms and conditions that people are being asked to accept, I think it's getting a lot of people to look more deeply at the privacy policy. I think we're being trained to do this more and more these days. And I mean, I don't know how much of an immediate change it's going to make. I'm in I think maybe a unique position. I know what they're doing with my data. So I'm under no illusion. I don't think any of us are. We work in marketing and have done for decades. I know how I'm being targeted. I know that they're collecting that information. Heck, I'm sure all of us have collected information from .coms and social campaigns and all sorts of things, right? We use it. But I don't think a lot of people have realized to quite the extent that their information gets shared. WhatsApp is still end-to-end encrypted. When it comes to B2C communications, they assume that the business is end-to-end encrypting. And that's definitely a Facebook move, right? That's a big tech. It's not my problem. We just provide the platform. You do with it what you will. That's a common theme that we see come up again and again. And the fact that now they could be sharing unencrypted information potentially, that businesses are having conversations with folks on WhatsApp, and then that can carry through their purchase information if they're using WhatsApp payments, can carry through. That is concerning. Is it surprising that they are pushing off responsibility for that to the businesses? No. Would it be a surprise if WhatsApp, for its normal C2C, user-to-user communications, ended up putting ads on the platform? No, none of this is a surprise. I don't think it's a nail in the coffin yet, because Facebook are Facebook. And just like you said, globally, WhatsApp is huge. And it would be very annoying for me as a foreigner in another country, like a foreigner living in America, to lose that common app that I talk to friends in Latin America, in Australasia, in Europe, and across America, less so America, throughout Asia.
What would be interesting? What would be interesting to me is to get into the data and find out whether or not people have abandoned the app or they're just exploring their options. Because it's just like, so a lot of people went to Telegraph or Telegraph, right? Yeah. So Telegram. So a lot of people went to Telegram. That doesn't mean that a lot of people are using Telegram. Like when they said that TikTok was being taken down, I downloaded the app, but I never activated it. It's just like people go and they explore other apps when there's big news, but it doesn't mean that they're not using the platform. And I'm wondering whether or not this is just a tempest in a teapot. In the end, is it just a matter of people being concerned about privacy because it's in the news, but when it comes to practice, they're just going to continue using the app?
I think so. I mean, I will for certain things. Like I'm on family message groups, and for us to all move to something, God, if we moved back to Skype or if we moved to something else, like I don't do a lot of stuff on Facebook Messenger for that reason, but also us OG WhatsApp folks, I think there's still a little bit of nostalgia there. A lot of us moved to WhatsApp in the early 2010s because it was end-to-end encrypted and because it seemed like they took privacy seriously. And now, if I was I wouldn't be doing anything. I wouldn't be sending any private information, over WhatsApp. I certainly wouldn't use WhatsApp payments. I wouldn't use Facebook payments. I just wouldn't. I use PayPal. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even use Apple Pay, but WhatsApp, I'm in the same boat. My husband's from Italy. Most of his family, all of his family is over there. Well, we have one nephew in Chicago. And, because WhatsApp actually works really well with Google Translate for me, it's just like cut and paste and copy. And, I'm having a conversation, but I don't speak Italian and they don't speak English. But WhatsApp is like we have so many family things. And I know my husband's in telecom. He does so much stuff on WhatsApp. It's I think that if any of that got disrupted, I would be the same as you, Michelle. I would just, I wouldn't, I don't care. I don't do payments. I don't share photos. I don't do anything like that. I personally think where privacy is concerned, if you have to be your own best advocate, right? And that's that. It's just it's such a big conversation, and most people just don't care because most people just want things to work when they want to have them there for them.
Well, it doesn't seem that unreasonable. From what I can tell from the terms changes that they've made, it doesn't seem like Facebook or WhatsApp are being particularly unreasonable about this request. They're talking about B2C communications, which is customer service, or selling opportunities, communicating with brands about opportunities to buy something. You know, brands want that information that they're collecting. You know, they want access to this information because they're dealing with their customers and prospects. And that's the first line of opportunity. And the second line is it's basically a free app still. So why not just, you know, allow them to serve a couple ads? It doesn't mean that your communication is being disrupted. It doesn't mean that your communication is being in any way analyzed. It's just talking about the brand interactions. Isn't that like a reasonable request on the part of Facebook? Maybe.
Well, Bob, I was going to say, it would, in an ideal world, yes, but the core issue is a lack of trust. And for Facebook, they've done nothing to improve or correct their image. And so for them to be taking out full page ads in certain markets to say, hey, everything's fine, nothing to see here, just making sure you understood, it's kind of quite ironic. I was quite surprised they didn't actually run hyper targeted ads on Facebook so that they could get to the people who are worried about this. Sorry if that was a snarky joke there.
I'm surprised they didn't serve ads on WhatsApp explaining
well,
it.
I've got a great business model for them, actually. I think they should go with a subscription model, maybe say $1 a download and then charge you $1 a year just to make it a paid model, which gave you more that's what they used to do 10 or 7 or 8 years ago. So for me, just listening in, I have no trust or faith in the owners of WhatsApp, aka Facebook, and the leaders of that. And they were on record in their numbers saying, hey, it doesn't make any money. So I can only suppose that they are going to do what it takes to make money and to monetize and to profitize this. And with their track record of keeping consumer and people's information private, there is no confidence that they are going to do the right things in going forward. And so, it may sound like me being hyperbolic, but there are too many facts, there are too many court cases, there are too many instances of them doing it wrong. But equally, I was going through my notes and I think I got updated terms from Uber, Fetch, which is like a couponing company, in YouTube. I don't read any of those, right? So I'm assuming that WhatsApp are probably getting all the attention, but there's lots of other shenanigans going on elsewhere in all the other terms that have been updated recently in terms of what I've been seeing. But it's, as I was researching more and more around this, there's an interesting article that I saw which talked about how awful Messenger was and how WhatsApp is a much better proposition, end-to-end encryption and all this stuff versus Facebook's Messenger product. So I guess if you've got something that's worse in terms of privacy than WhatsApp, then WhatsApp will look favorable. But until people realize it's the same freaking company, and I can't trust any of you. So for me, it's like comparing, I don't know, Mr. Rogers or Annie with Freddy Krueger and saying, which one should I go with? Well, we'd all go with Mr. Rogers, but Mr. Rogers is secretly owned by Facebook. So I don't really trust them. And I'm maybe sounding very cynical here, but that's all I've got to say about it. And there.
What do you use? What do you use, Sam, now for that sort of messaging?
I try and avoid it. So I do have a WhatsApp group. Is organizing rugby trips to the UK with friends, and I've got a few. It's more personal, but it's limited. And yes. WhatsApp is ubiquitous, so with 2 billion users and everything. But it grates me every time I see the Facebook logo because I don't trust them.
Yeah, that is annoying when they brought that in.
And they don't make any money, which means they're going to, and they own Facebook. So I know there's shenanigans going on, and there's nothing that anyone can convince me otherwise. So for me, it's an uncomfortable position, which is why the Telegram and the other signals of this world. I'm looking for competition in the marketplace because I want to leave a Facebook-owned property because I don't have any confidence in that brand and the leadership of that company. And again, they've proven me wrong, or they've shown their true colors so many times that this can only be bad news in the future for the 2 billion global users who probably have less rights.
My position is always that when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter whether or not you've got privacy or not. You're leaving such a data trail behind you, and every time you log on to the internet, that there is no hiding who you are. There is no hiding what your intentions are. They've got enough algorithms at this point to be able to predict the future with a high degree of accuracy about what my next consumer purchase is going to be. And the best of the marketers are taking advantage of that already. So, you trying to protect the privacy of your rugby trip planning seems almost ludicrous to me. And I think more and more consumers are going to start getting that attitude as well, if they haven't gotten there already. And I understand that some conversations are very private and you want to make sure that those are private. So I understand the need for some kind of privacy, but don't take it online then. It's
exactly.
just like, that's not the place for the conversation.
Well, for me, then the relationship has to change to a commercial or monetarily. I need value back. If you're going to use my stuff and use it anyway, pay me. And I know many guests on the show talked about this, and I'm sure Joe Jaffe's screaming it right now because he's written stuff about it. But
money isn't the money is not the money is not the end all be all in terms of value for your participation in this. You get the access to the platform. If the ads are actually well targeted, you get the service of getting information about products that you really want. I mean, it's there is a value exchange going on, and it doesn't always have to be pay me for my data.
Well, I'm just going to record. Please pay me. So send the check to Sam Lorna, and I'll take everyone's money. But absolutely, because they're making billions of dollars. This is not a check. If Mark Zuckerberg woke up and said, you know what, I'm going to make WhatsApp a non-profit charitable organization to do good for the world, a la a Wikipedia, then I would be a bit more tame about my position. But as he's a for-profit and he's making billions and he's about to make more billions, nope, I want the compensation, which is hard cash, because that is for me the only thing that's going to make me feel better about all the shenanigans going on behind the scenes. Again, I'm not a raging capitalist, but for me, he's making billions. So why can't I have some?
Well, I say,
Sam. Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Is there any precedent for any app paying you for your data? Just wondering, because a lot of folks in the chatter about this saying, be wary of anything that is free. And then if you pay for it, you expect a certain amount of privacy, and you're probably going to pay more attention to how they manage your data. You're going to perhaps do more consumer research, read reviews, read some tech articles, and find out if the thing you're about to pay money for is actually as private and secure and trustworthy as you hope it will be.
I'd like to chime in real quick. I think that did you see Social Dilemma? Yeah. Everybody's seen that movie, right? I think that people started to more so talk about themselves as, like what Sam is saying. And I agree. You want my information, you want all of that information, maybe, I then become the product, right? You have to pay for it. But in Social Dilemma, they talk about it, I think, a lot. I saw it when it first came out, but their whole positioning was you should be paid for your information. If they want it, they should pay you for it, just like you have to pay them for their services. They want your information. So I think that that's kind of where that mentality is coming from a little bit, because, that movie is really still, it's like an epiphany for some people. That movie exists even today. Yeah, sorry, you guys, I lose my train of thought. I have to disclose this to everyone listening because I will lose my train of thought. I'm on a medication that makes me do that. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
So am I. We're like drug twins.
Oh, God, Bob, it's terrible. I'm so embarrassed half the time.
Oh, medication is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so, okay, good. I'm glad you understand.
Wine, so I'm in a similar boat. But I do wonder if there is there precedent? Do any of you know if there is precedent for people being paid for their data?
No.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some business models out there. I was digging out. I can't find it. I'm sure one of the podcasts of my show, there's different models out there which are based on being more, splitting the value between the participants or the users and the brands, and actually create some sort of value exchange there. And I'll dig it up if I can. And equally, if there isn't, Michelle, let's start working on that business model. Let's go to San Francisco. Let's get some funding to actually create this new thing.
There are some bit players who have not got much traction, which, basically do a rev share split on advertising. I mean, it's like there are some interesting plays out there, but none of them have caught fire. And I'm not saying that the idea doesn't work or it won't work, but it hasn't worked up until now. And I think it's also just, in a lot of ways, it's ludicrous to expect a company to pay you for the data when you're using their free platform. If you're using their free platform, you got to accept the fact that they're going to have to monetize you in some other way. And I think that's just reasonable. And if you don't like it, quit and go to Clubhouse.
I was just going to say that. You got
for the time being, until 2025, and when they kind of change their business model, monetize everything, and serve you ads every 5 seconds.
I'm sure there's already brand ambassadors and personal influencers in there already.
Yeah. It's everywhere. This conversation is now going to shift if we keep going, so we better shut up.
Well, let's move on to the next topic because it kind of rolls right into it. The saga over Apple's changes to IDs for advertisers, or IDFA access, continues to evolve as the date approaches for activating the device notifications. It's becoming more and more obvious to me and to a lot of the analysts out there that it's already leading companies to look for ways to circumvent the restrictions rather than comply, which is always a bad sign. So, Sam, is this move by Apple going to lead to even worse advertiser intrusions into user privacy? Are we really worried that some smart guy out there is going to find some way to circumvent this for any amount of time before Apple closes the loophole?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Bob. I think you want a bit more than that. So as I was listening, the prior topic and this topic kind of makes me sad because there's this move to make things better and to kind of be more mindful and thoughtful. Whether you argue Apple are doing it for the right reasons or actually trying to, carve up the market or move the market in their favor, and then there's this other force which is trying to get around the rules, and I think that's just. It's going to happen, but I'm hoping Apple actually stand their ground in terms of identifying and banning those apps, those propositions which kind of work around it. Because as I think we're researching this, they're kind of say, oh, we can fingerprint you by your OS and your browser version, your language and IP address, and we can actually so they're going to build in things to get around it. And I think the premise of IDFA for me, again, you can probably tell a common theme. I'm in the camp of greater privacy, greater protection, and being more transparent for what you're doing and telling me overtly. And if I pay, if it's a paid for app, there's some value exchange there. Then maybe I have higher expectations. But I think the FTC, I'm sure that the legislative bodies are going to get involved, because if you're circumventing platform rules and they're trying to ban you and you're still doing stuff which is kind of under the table, I'm sure the FTC or some of the bodies are going to get involved and start finding those brands or those developers who are getting around the system. So for me, it's one to watch, because I hope that Apple stays. Do you
really feel like they're going to get into trouble for this? I mean, the only people who are policing this are Apple. I mean, Apple is the one who's making this move on the iPhone to basically bring up a dialog, a notification that says this app is going to use your data in this way. And that's what people are fighting for. And if people circumvent that, that's not breaking any FCC regulations.
I think it's who's breaking it and why they're breaking it, because you're getting, for me, which stands out is this Sleeping Giants and the lady who kind of co-founded that, who set up the brand safety company. It'll come to me in a second. And there's much more traction in what's going on, who's doing it, and why they're doing it, for right or for wrong, and shining a light on what's going on. So I think there's actually, yes, there are more detectives, there are more police or inspectors checking what's going on. And if if you're not demonstrating high integrity, you're going to get caught and you're going to get found out. And if your brand's associated, that's not going to look good for you. So I think there is more transparency and more discussion bubbling up in this area, and people taking it more seriously. seriously. So as a marketer, and if I'm attaching these past two topics to brand safety, and a lot of CMOs and a lot of C-suiters now are throwing that term out there, and now it behooves the agencies, the participants, the creators and developers to tell us what's going on, because they're not going to pay you if there's a brand safety issue. So I think people are going to get found out, or it's going to be a way of bringing value back to the ad buyers. So I think there's something in that, Bob.
Yeah, but also Apple has a pretty stringent app approval process. And that's why they've delayed this update for a little while, to give existing apps the chance to update. And if they try and find workarounds and they have to resubmit to the store to be, to be compliant, they very well may be found out. And, Apple will get better at detecting the workarounds. And I think to your point, Sam, this is going to set a precedent where the end user is hopefully likely to become a bit more discerning and to definitely give their consent to the app developers / brands / startups that they trust, that have proven trust. And if not, that's going to be a barrier for them to get more users to download their app. And I think that we're already seeing it now, where people are talking a lot more on Reddit, a lot more on Discord, a lot more on these other apps about whether they should be downloading apps. So kind of gone are the days where you just look at the app review on the Apple Store, and here are the days where people search for more tech background on whether this is a trusted app developer and whether they are doing good things or not with your data. There's a lot more than just the review site now. People do a bit more research.
When you say people, let me follow up on that. I mean, we're talking about tech people, right? We're not talking about the average consumer, because the average consumer is not doing that kind of research to find out whether or not the app developer is a trusted app.
It completely depends, because you're going to find that they do passive research as well. And that comes through, whether there is overarching positive sentiment about an app, if a whole bunch of people are moving toward it. It's a proven case in point with the WhatsApp in India, that everyone, that they moved away in droves because all of a sudden, there was fear that their information was being shared and not encrypted, or how, there was a lot of misinformation around why people moved away from the platform. Was it a bad thing? Not necessarily, because they probably hopefully moved to more secure platforms. But what I mean is there's general sentiment. And I think that just like with brand trust and all the rest of it, these things spread quite quickly. Also, they will be forced to consent or not. So that small step, like when ad blockers came out, like when the cookie policy came out across Europe, these things are actually getting people to stop and think a little bit more. And Apple will say that you have to put a pop-up, and if somebody doesn't consent, then that app cannot store that information. Okay. And if they've put a workaround in, it'll get knocked back from the store approval.
How many people? When something pops up like the little cookie thing, we're tracking you or you're accepting this, whatever, don't you just click the X and just move on? I mean, isn't that just the total mindset of most people?
No, but not me.
No.
I do, but I think general consumerism does. In general, most people, they're going to a website. That thing comes up on the bottom. You can't figure out why you can't navigate the website. So you see it's because you have to click on that thing down on the bottom. And then it's a deterrent for sure, right? But most people are at that website because they want something from that website. So I think human nature is, okay, just another thing to bother me. I'm going to click that X and I'm moving on, right? Because I want what I want.
I've always said that since this topic first came up, I've always said that we got to wait for the data to come out after it's actually implemented before we start crying wolf and saying that this is all going to, everything's going to fall apart on the mobile advertising space. Because I think Wendy's got a point here. We don't take the time to read these dialog boxes. The average consumer does not take the time to read them. They just click on them to get past them as quickly as possible, and then they agree to the terms, and then you got advertising coming through. You've got data collection, and And the user experience has not changed in any substantive way, except that maybe the ads get a little better. So is that terrible? I don't think that this is going to be.
There's a priority order, though. There's a priority of pop-up messages. I agree that, do you allow, cookies, accept cookies or not? That is probably a very low barrier, and a lot of people will just click yes. Some of us weirdos actually think about the site we're on and go, do I want to? Maybe not. I'll see if it's on another site, that article, or maybe I'll look at their actual policy. But you're right, a majority of people, I do agree on that. An app pop-up, a dialog box that actually comes up, I think that they hold a higher priority for us. When an app or a site on your phone wants access to your camera, or wants access to your microphone, or wants access to your contacts, there are certain notifications that we do take inherently more seriously. And if this new policy from Apple forces people to use a dialog box, the developer to use a dialog box, and for it to pop up and say, are you okay with us, basically storing and using your personal information, people, and the app will still work if you don't, then
right.
Well, so why not do just do the same thing that a lot of websites did? It's just like they put the notification up there about cookies, and if you don't accept the cookies, you can't enter the website. And it's just like people go, "Oh, I can't enter the website. Okay, I'll accept the cookies." So I mean, it's the same thing with apps. I mean, we can use that same type of mentality with the consumer, and they're gonna click on the side of the dialog box that says, "Go ahead, use my data."
Exactly.
I don't know that Apple will allow that or not. That's a good question.
Because someone has searched out an app. I know, I always put myself in the position, right? Okay, I got to go find another app because I have to have this app to do this thing that I need to do. Okay, I find the app. I read a little bit about it. Okay, it's free. I put it onto my phone or wherever. And then would the notification pop up, or would that notification pop up prior to me downloading the app onto my phone?
I believe it's when you go to use it.
It's when you first load it up in the memory.
Exactly. That's the problem. Is it should be opposite than that, right? This app, something maybe should be on the before you download it, like a star or a skull and crossbone or something that basically says, this app does this. Are you sure you want to download it? And then
that's a good
you're
point.
Good.
Once you have it, I barely delete apps.
Mr. Yuck is mean. Mr. Yuck is green. Come on. The people who grew up in America know about Mr. Yuck, but okay, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, some of the conversation we're having here is that's the problem, right? The apps are packed. So when I go to, because I'm US, I research or dig into a lot of football, as in soccer stuff. I go to a UK site, you click on the button, and then you reject all, or you opt to choose which ones. And there's 127 tracking companies who using all this data. I'm thinking, what the hell? Who are these people, and why do they want my data? It's a 35-second video I'm going to watch, and then I'm gone again. Why do you need all this information? So for me, it's what is that value exchange? And the lady I was thinking of is Nandini Jami, and she co-founded Check My Ads. And I just wanted to give her a shout out, because I think the awareness that's been brought to all this is really forcing the agenda. Because if you're a legitimate site or a legitimate app, and you tell me about the value exchange, i.e., look, free content till X and until I have to pay for it, or change the language that gets me to opt in and support the content, or the content we expect content for free and ads at accepted cost. So do a better job of communicating to me what's going on, and have higher integrity. I think we could buy in, but there's a lack of trust in this space, and there's proven fraud going on in this space that I think Apple cannot take the side of, oh, okay, then you're going to bypass our rules, we won't do it. I think Apple is going to have to step up, because especially I think in the US with the new administration coming in, there's going to be a lot more scrutiny about these companies. And I know, Bob, that terminology of big tech may be a bit of a loaded term, but there is more consideration about these companies, and they have to be raising the bar. Now, are they going to get it right at all times? We're not sure, but they have to be raising the bar. But look, I'm not naive enough to believe Apple's doing it all for the great cause, because guess what? If they move the market in their favor and they move it towards more app revenue, and people are now going to be more likely to create or download paid for apps, they get that 30% cut. So it's going to be, help their P&L. So I'm not naive enough to say that might not happen. And then what's the check for that? Is, someone going to, scrutinize Apple and say, okay, you've met a threshold. That 30% is a monopoly in that context. So it's going to have to be 20 or whatever. So I'm not naive enough to say there's no upside for Apple, but equally, I am in support of the direction they're going, and let's see what happens when it actually goes live. Let's play out what happens and see if we're in a better or worse off place.
Well, we have some lighter news to cover this week as well, and you wouldn't think it's very light considering that the preamble is all about COVID. Right now, COVID is going really, really terribly here in the U.S. They're calling for up to 500,000 deaths total as of February, so it's not looking good here. And in the midst of all this, the Cannes Lions announced that they will be returning this coming June, leading to a whole bunch of mixed reactions. Sam, is this announcement premature? Is it even wise to contemplate a move like this? What's your thoughts on Cannes coming back in June?
Oh, blimey. It feels like I'm going to be the Grinch throughout this whole episode. I think I'd like to think they are part of arguing for optimism and hope, because in all seriousness, the pandemic has had a huge impact. A lot of people have died, disrupted a lot of industries. A lot of people lost their jobs, lost their livelihood, lost their lives. And it's been terrible for most people. And so how do you balance the reality with optimism and hope? And so I've received from musicians I follow gigs being, concerts being announced in March 2021, and I'm going, what the hell? How is that feasible? So for June 2021, I can see they're putting a flag down and saying, hey, we hope to be able to be in this position, versus South by Southwest, CES, and Sundance, who've all said no, we're going to be totally digital. So premature is one way of looking at it. Another way is saying, look, let's at least give you something to be optimistic about. But I think they can do more. So as I was poking around their website, there needs to be more narrative about doing the right thing, about safety, about health, about people doing it in a safe way. If it's, hey, let's set up another party for people to get together and go wild. If you don't have any, that feels like in this current climate, that's a wrong message to send. So I think they need to step up, and I haven't seen it yet, to say, look, this is why we're doing it. This is what's going to be good for the community. This is we're going to help the world. This is how we're going to help our industry, and not just be about, it looks like a possible just purely money making play. When I look at their numbers, right? So I was talking to friends in hospitality, and November was good. December slowed down because of the surges, and they're seeing May 2021 bookings picking up. So there is human beings, consumers are actually booking stuff with optimism and hope in mind. And so this is not completely out of step to what's happening in the marketplace. And then one last point I'd like to make on this, though, is if you think about it, right? If you got two companies pitching, one goes in person, the other doesn't. That first time you lose an in-person to the in-person will shift that behavior, that opportunity cost. If your boss says, hey, why don't you go to Cannes, or Cannes rather? So I can see that it's not going to be a linear journey. There are going to be some people who are going to go because the opportunity cost of not going. And as I say, if three agencies are there and two aren't, the three who are there who get the deal are going to benefit. So I sense that there is going to be high demand, even if people aren't going to be overt talking about it.
Sorry, Michelle.
Go ahead.
I'm so used to, like on Clubhouse, you have to flash your microphone if you're like clapping or. So anyway, it's so funny. Anyway, my son works in wine distribution, and he works for the company that distributes all of the wine to all of the major cruise lines around the world, and he basically has the inside scoop on travel industry and hospitality and all of that, because the cruise lines got hit really hard, right? And he said that, it's very complicated, as we all know, what goes into projecting out, and there's so many things that go into all of this. And I'll get back to why I support what they're doing with Cannes, because there are so many people working who we don't see to provide protocols for the travel industry to get more vibrant. Forget the airlines. Even my son will tell you that's just like an infested, bubble flying through the air. But he said the cruise lines are almost like the opposite of what they used to be thought of. So their whole marketing and advertising positioning is, we're the safest place on earth. We have such strong protocols that, between vaccines, COVID testing, taking temperatures, the entire having to be quarantined, everything. If you want to go on a cruise and you want to really enjoy yourself, these are the lengths of that we're going to protect you. And we feel as though it's the safest place to be. And it's really interesting positioning because that's what they have to do to convince people to start traveling again. But safety is always a concern. And I'm sure they're going to do that. They're probably developing those protocols and seeing how to make it a safe space for everyone. And since there are the vaccines, you can pretty much figure it out. If you want to come to Cannes, you really have to have a vaccine. You have to show us that you've had the vaccine and na. And then that, I believe, is how they'll probably make it a safe space and bring it back. I think we all should have hope and aspire to be normal again and get back to what was normal. So I support it.
For me, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that they're probably going to run some kind of scaled back version. I mean, the early announcement is a little bit overly hopeful. And I think it's mainly about getting hotel bookings and getting people excited about it and looking forward to it. But I can't see the holding companies sending large numbers of their staff as they have in the past. I can see some of the top leaders who probably skipped the head in the line and got the vaccine or anybody else.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can see that going on. I can see them showing up and having a much more scaled down event that's not based on education, is just based on the awards and about the networking. If something like that were to go down, I mean, I would be all behind it. But I can't see I can't see any other reason to have an in-person live event. If you're
what would that look like, though, Bob? The irony is that would not be a good look, right? So the people who got there have vaccines just happens to be all the hobnobs and bigwigs.
Well, exactly.
It's going to So that scenario for me was reinforced the negatives about this elitist kind of organization, which is not representing the industry. And so there's been a lot, because I think the Olympics are going to happen around that same time. So there's a lot of debate about athletes and Olympians should have the vaccine ahead of other people. And I think there's a whole moral and human aspect that is challenging. So I think to what Wendy point she made, I think there's an opportunity for these organizations to really showcase that more safety aspect and really tell a story about that more overtly, but actually mean it. So I think from day one. So when I went to the site, it's not there. I'm hoping they're working on it. But if you tell me that you're doing it for the right reasons and you're doing it in the right way, because for the greater good, then I can see it. But if it's just, hey, we've got a big hole in our P&L and we need to get this, get this money back in terms of revenue for shareholders, or we're going to make it so that the rich and the elite can afford to do it. I think there's going to be a lot more blowback. So I think, but I'm looking at
Cannes to be seen, Sam. Maybe it won't be like that. Maybe they just want to put their foot forward and be the first ones out there, and they come up with a protocol that works. And I know I always hear so many mixed messages on the BeanCast about Cannes. I've never gone, and I would never go. But I think for some reason, I always feel like people are kind of like pissed off and jealous of the people that do go and win the awards. I don't know.
They do. I don't know why. I've gone once and I don't need to go again. But I have a few theories on this. So Sam, to your point, I really agree that they need to be messaging transparently right now about why they're doing it. And not just about the safety, although I think that's vital, but they need to be saying why. If this is if they're trying to be optimistic and they're trying to reboot the industry, if they are trying to support local business, perhaps they are already envisaging that this is going to be more for local people and that this is about France and this is a French conference and we're going to open it up to the world, but France is going to get to go. Then I can absolutely see why they would be doing it, and I would respect that. And that, because within countries people are moving and traveling and going on vacations much more freely, and it's much easier, because I couldn't imagine the quarantine situation. Like, America will basically not be able to go, and well, they shouldn't. And then coming back again, well, they don't even quarantine here, so who knows? But, like Australia couldn't go, for example, because you wouldn't be allowed back into the country. Or if you did, you'd have to pay so much more, because you'd have to do the mandatory 2 weeks. And a lot of Australians are going to global conferences more readily these days. So I would really love them to explain why. I also have just a conspiracy theory of my own, that maybe they are doing it for money reasons, but that they have to hold it in person in order to get grants. So this happened in Australia. A good friend of mine, George Hedden, runs Pause Fest, like play pause. My accent makes that a weird word. Pause Fest.
I was going to say,
like on a dog. Yeah. A dog.
For some reason, I understood what you were saying, so I'm right there with you.
But I should have done the first time around. Thank you for. I've become too American, I think. Yeah, okay, now I got you.
Pause. Yeah, pause. Like pause. Hold still. Pause Fest, which is an amazing conference every year in February. Melbourne, in Australia. Shout out.
Love it. I'll be there next year.
It's fantastic. I go every year, but not this year. I was there last year. And so it really, through a lot of conferences, their local grant programs are really confusing. And, for a conference like that, they chose to take it fully digital this year for very obvious reasons. It's a very international conference. And, they didn't want to just have local people be able to come. So they chose to make the whole thing digital, just to make it seamless and safe. And they didn't end up getting a grant that they were led to believe they would get. And, who knows, it's quite contentious at this moment, it may happen, but there may be a similar situation going on with CAN, where they have to hold certain parts of it in person in order to get the grants, because they have to show that they're supporting local businesses and small businesses, and that it's for locals. So that could also be a factor. And then I think there's also I love the optimism point, Sam, that you made, but they were also very optimistic last year. And also, and then they called it off. And a lot of people were kind of pissed off. And if they're just doing the same thing again, and then they're going to call it off again, how is that going to be for local businesses as well? And the hotels and the bookings and everything. That could be really bad.
I think this is a test, you guys. This is them doing a press release saying, this is what I think we're going to do. They're going to listen to the flack that comes back, or the positivity, or whatever it is. And then they're probably going to say, okay, well, I really think that they're trying. Who knows? They might cancel it. But my other half of my family lives in Italy, and it is not easy to travel within the EU at all because of the pandemic. So that's, maybe they're just going to have it locally, like for people who are in France. In country. Right.
But I can understand that, because it's a very French conference, and I don't think anyone could fault them for that. I think that it would be hybrid. Regardless of what happens, this is going to be a hybrid event. And I love this, because I'm a huge hybrid event proponent. In fact, in a women in event production group I'm in, I run that channel, hybrid events. And I love it, because I think having some people in person makes it even more visceral. And I don't think it's more FOMO. I think that they could have people, roving the beaches and having more interviews, and it would feel a little bit more real than just the online only, everyone in their separate studios. I like hybrid.
The piece I just can't understand, because as I was reading, they're going to do 2020 and 2021. They're going to review both years, which is odd in itself to do. Right. So it's going to be a lot. So if you're going, you're a judge, you're actually probably going to be doing a lot of work. So I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to turn you off or not. So
well, who knows what? Because 2021, I was thinking, well, 2021, let's see, there wasn't a whole lot of production going on in 2021, right? I was just thinking maybe there's not that much content to look at and to judge. But I don't know the rules of Cannes, right? I don't know that it has to be produced and done in the year and this and that, and the other thing. So anyway.
Well, we've got only a few minutes right now to talk about our last topic, and it's a weird one. It's a very weird data point that I found, that insurance ads that feature NFL quarterbacks actually perform better than other insurance ads. Wendy, any thoughts on why this would be the case?
Oh my God, Bob, I love this.
Especially given it's such a weird year of sporting in lockdown and empty stadiums. And why is it that quarterbacks are doing so well in this particular genre?
Well, number one, it doesn't make any difference to the guy that sits and watches football where they watch it from. That's how I have to see it. And I grew up with this fanaticism in my home, right? And it's totally relatable. These guys are so relatable, especially when I saw that they asked, what's his name? The guy, I don't know, I have it in front of me. But when they interviewed him, it would be exactly what I would do if I was going to put somebody on camera and I didn't know if they could do it or not. I would just ask them some stupid questions and see how they reacted, right? And he did a really great job on that. He's personable. He invites people in. He relates to the audience. Football players relate to the audience. Why is Joe Namath, who pretty much should sit down when he's reading his lines, right? Why is he still in all of these commercials that are targeted to the silver generation, I think, the older generation? It's because he still carries this aspirational, feeling for people who are older. They admire him. They trust him. Same thing with Tom Selleck. So it's the same thing here. I am not surprised whatsoever that insurance ads that have players in them.
No, not necessarily players. This is specifically focused on quarterbacks.
Just for,
I agree with you on
insurance.
everything you just said about football players being great spokespeople if they have personality and they relate to people. That it makes a lot of sense to put a football player in an ad. That's why so many of them do ads. But
Right.
Why is it specifically that quarterbacks do well in insurance ads? That just boggles my mind.
So it's quarterbacks in insurance ads
Yes.
specifically?
Yes.
Okay. Well, quarterbacks, I used to live across the street from Rusty Hilger. He was like a quarterback once. And they're sexy and doesn't make any difference because it's a freaking quarterback and they rule the game and men and women and everybody love quarterbacks. I mean, seriously, the quarterback is the star of every team pretty much and the receiver, right? But that quarterback, I mean, come on, it's a visceral thing. You trust it. It's no like and trust. And insurance companies know that. Other than that, the numbers speak, and I would question ROIs, and they look at lifetime value probably of one customer, and also how do they know, that they're actually converting? I don't know. Maybe they know that they're watching.
I'm sure this is some sentiment and measurement. I mean, It's just like that's all they're doing usually.
Exactly.
But I was going to say, as I look into this, I did some research beforehand. The sort of third or fourth biggest category for advertising is insurance. They spend $8 billion a year.
Right.
And so for me, there's a nice correlation between ad spend and recall, whether it's aided or unaided, in the whole freaking industry, right? So if you go through all of the insurance companies, and of course, only one or two have NFL quarterbacks. So I'm very suspicious that this might be just trying to get more NFL talent gigs at like Geico or Progressive or Aflac,
Right.
because Aflac has Saban from Alabama, who's not a quarterback. But yeah, there's a nice little layup there for some brand and ambassadors getting gigs for their.
So what you're saying is there's a sports agent out there who's rubbing his hands together.
The sports agents are loving this. So they're absolutely loving this. But listen, I think context is king, like all ads, right? So I'm sure that if you had a George Clooney movie and you ran an espresso ad, that would work better. Or the Jennifer Aniston, if there's a Friends movie or Friends show and you ran that Jennifer Aniston I Love ad, I'm sure you'd get the same sort of pop in terms of recall or search behavior. So for me,
exactly.
I think the core of this message is advertising works. And I think we could all agree with that.
I think we can.
You're marketing to 45-year-olds, right? The average person that watches an NFL game, I just heard this the other day, it was like 45-year-old male. 45-year-old males, they have families, they have cars, they have this, they have that, and if this guy uses Progressive, man, I'm going to do that. I mean, it's just, I think it's genius. I love insurance commercials.
Well, with that, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Wendy Cooper. You can find her at wendycooper.com, also cspotrun.com.
Yeah.
So tell us what's going on in your world, Wendy. What would you like to promote?
Oh, well, not much is going on in my world because I jumped down that rabbit hole that Joe Jaffe warned me about when I went on to Clubhouse. So, Joe, I'm just shouting out to you. You were right. My I have two podcasts, everyone. One is The Wendy Cooper Show, conversations with remarkable people over 50. And you can, I have interviewed Bob Norp, and I call them story views. So I would love for anybody to check those out everywhere you get your podcasts. And I also have another one that I like to promote, which is called The Five with Wendy Cooper. There's 140 episodes, I think. I used to do it daily, but I did get pod burnout on doing that daily. It is only 5 to 6, 7 minutes a day, and it is me at 65 years old, just being my authentic self, and always random, always unscripted, and a little bit wacky. So you can find that everywhere you get your podcast. And that was number 130 in Ghana radio in India the other day. So I just want to give that. Thank you, Ghana, India radio.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Now, next up, we have Michelle Excel. You can find her at theantipodean.us. That's the home of The Antipodean, a consultancy where she's doing some awesome work with creative technology. Tell us what's going on in your world. What would you like to promote?
Cool. So we've got a bunch of things coming up. I'm launching a newsletter soon, but I don't even have my sign up page ready. So I would just recommend people connect with me on LinkedIn if they're listening. It's Michelle Excel, Excell, and I'm very easy to find because I'm pretty sure I'm the only one on LinkedIn. And newsletter is going to be coming out soon, all about creative technology. It's going to be called This Is Interesting Because ... And as some of my marketing friends have told me, that will basically can be blog, but also me on Clubhouse, because I chat to very interesting people every week to inform my immersive technology consulting practice. So on Clubhouse, I'm at The Antipodean. And I did want to also ask Wendy, what is your handle on Clubhouse? How do we find you?
Just like everything else, because I'm mentioning Joe Jaffe. He once got all over me for not having everything branded Wendy Cooper. So my company is C-Spot Run, but my Clubhouse handle, everyone, is Wendy Cooper. And it's Wendy Cooper with an I.
Got it. Great. That's awesome. And the only other thing I would say is, because I'm on newsletter, brain right now, because I'm starting my own, is if anyone out there is into creative tech, streaming, voice, AR, gaming, I really recommend following Protocol. They're part of Politico. Protocol are fantastic. Check them out on Twitter, their website, Protocol newsletter. Their newsletter is just the best out there right now. I'm loving it.
That's great. That's great. And thank you for the recommendation. Last but not least, Sam Mani. You can find him at cisquared.net. You can also find him at marketingtransform.com, which is the home of his podcast. Tell us what's going on in your world. What would you like to promote, Sam?
Well, I first of all love to promote my fellow guests on this week's show. I have to say, I'm listening to the last couple of Wendy's podcasts, and that 5-6 minute format is really cool. It's just that kind of stream of consciousness kind of, it feels quite intimate. So I love that. And Michelle Excel, it's so easy to find you on the internet because you have such a unique name. So I love the fact that, yes, Michelle Excel is, so definitely go and check out the stuff she's doing. As far as I'm concerned, something I'm proud of, some of the work I'm doing is with CI Squared. We really focus on storytelling, but it's really been developed through research in neuroscience and behavioral economics. And for me, it's all about helping building up people and developing people. So we train people, employees, leaders to listen effectively. So before you can tell great stories, you've really got to be able to listen, be aware of your biases before you can then tell stories that inspire. So really enjoying the work there. It can help with brand positioning. It can help with really when you're misunderstanding customer needs and developing products that fail, you can help course correct there. And obviously that old gnarly one, misalignment between marketing and agencies in terms of rework time and increased costs. So how can you really tap into listening and then storytelling to help you improve that? So hit me up and I'd love to help and love to chat about using storytelling to help your brand, to help your business, to help your company.
And if I can recommend him, I will recommend him. Sam is a great person to work with, so you definitely want to reach out to him if you have some needs in that area. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can even find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, the fair for me this week was Natty Lights, or Natural Light, which is a beer here in the U.S., created the most expensive art installation, the world's most expensive art installation in Union in Grand Central Station. I was almost forgetting. I move out of New York and I forget Grand Central Station. But the world's most expensive art installation. And I thought it was pretty clever because what they did was they compiled actual diplomas from people who had just finished their education, and they put together how much each of them spent for tuition and calculated the price of the installation based on that, and went and put together an installation that was just a little bit more expensive than the most expensive painting that was ever auctioned off by Christie's. So I think it was a pretty clever use of the space. It's a clever installation. And it's really interesting to me how aligned it is, Sam, with with the brand. I mean, Natty's Lights is like the college brand. It's cheap beer.
Yes, I think. But what I love about it is that I think it just fits the times, right? I think they can do a lot more to drive awareness of this campaign, what they're doing, especially with the new, political administration coming in the US. It's such a sympathetic idea, and they're that administration sympathetic to the cause. But there's really a strong cause behind what they're saying here in terms of college debt and getting, starting off in a new career after graduating and all of those issues. So I think it's a great idea, and they've obviously brought it alive digitally because not a lot of people are traveling. But I think this brand could actually get a lot more traction over time with this idea. So it's a great idea, great execution, and I love it.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I love how aligned it is with who they are as a company. Now, the fail for this week, I'm going to give the Star and In Touch magazines, which are owned by the same company. They were caught running advertorials, Wendy, as actual news. No disclosure, no anything. I mean, advertorials are great, but you got to disclose them. You can't just run them as news.
Oh, God, can we go back to 1999? I mean, seriously, how can they make... Anyway, did they get fined for that? I just scanned it to tell you the truth because I went, that figures.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Now, the foul for this week I'm going to give to the Mill Chicago, who fired their top manager, Erica Hilbert, over election reversal tweets, which on the surface sounds like a really bad thing to do. I mean, whether you agree with the election or not, free speech allows people to have crazy opinions. But when you dig into this story, Michelle, she was saying all kinds of stuff that was borderline homophobic, ageist. And the worst part was she sat on the diversity committee for the Mill. So I can totally understand why this firing happened, but it's an ugly, ugly situation for the company to have to handle.
Whenever anything like this happens, and I haven't yet because this is the first I heard of it when you sent the topics for today, but I will. You jump on Twitter, you jump on Google, you jump on Fishbowl, and you really dig into this person and whether that person had a history, and also whether that agency, in this case, production company, had a history of like aiding and abetting them. So I'm not looking forward to it. I'm curious to find out, if this was a long time coming and whether there'd been calls for this for a long time. Because if not, I don't know what would drive you to publicly declare those things knowing the current climate. I really don't.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very smart if you want to keep your job, especially considering she was in a position of leadership. Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C-Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's it's like I don't know, like if it's it's like you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.